Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zinat Reza Khan. It's an absolute pleasure for me to get this invitation to join the Federation of Arab Scientific Research Councils and present on a topic that's very close to my heart, that has to do with academic integrity, research integrity. I am from the University of Wollongong in Dubai. I'm the associate professor in the School of Computer Science. I'm also the founding president of the Center for Academic Integrity in the UAE, which is an affiliation and a UAE chapter for European Union's Network for Academic Integrity Outreach Working Group. I've been working in this field since 2005. Like I said, it's an absolute passion area for me to be talking about academic integrity, to be talking about research integrity. As a lecturer, my area of teaching actually happens to be at cyber ethics and management information systems, digital transformation. So AI ethics kind of comes under that portfolio. So I'm able to now link the two areas and present this workshop to you. Just before we go ahead, just a quick disclaimer. Because learning is a lifelong process, I would like to give the disclaimer that some of the presentation slides that you see today, I have presented in other workshops, either on technology and education, presentations to schools or seminars, and even a couple of slides from my PhD, which was like a million years ago. I've learned this practice from one of my mentors and closest friends, Dr. Teddy Fishman, who is the former director for International Center for Academic Integrity in USA. Another disclaimer, some of the responses that may be given may be used for research and publication purposes anonymously. If you are participating, you are giving us tacit consent to use the responses. So let's start with the very basic research. So what do you understand by research? Now, as I understand, this is a webinar, so I'm going to kind of go ahead and include some of the answers that I've had in the past presentations when I've run workshops on research integrity. A lot of people say research has to do with finding something new, asking a question, doing some kind of investigation, proving something that you may have thought about, and so on. And if you have thought of all of these are correct answers. In a more holistic way, it is about starting with a question, going into the depths of what has already been done in and around that particular topic, operationalizing that methodology that you want in order to understand that question better and then to find answers for it, figuring out what is that methodology, data collection, experimentation, etc., observation, so on and so forth, and ultimately, of course, analyzing and presenting our findings in a manner that can add value, but also more importantly, that can be replicated if needed. So when it comes to research and integrity, we have actually a variety of values that uphold the integrity of research, starting all the way from honesty to objectivity, confidentiality, accuracy of the records of data and materials used, and the methodology that we are presenting, responsible publication, accountability and openness, respect for the intellectual property itself, mentoring, research safety, and most importantly, ethics. Now, ethics is what I'm focusing on for this particular masterclass, looking at understanding what is our responsibility when it comes to research and integrity. So before we go ahead with looking at concerns, I think it's really important at this stage to kind of recalibrate ourselves to what do we really understand by authorship, particularly in the 21st century. So definitely it means to be named as an author on a research output that is meritorious, and we accept it as a great honor that we have produced something with our name, and we were the first author, second author, third author, it doesn't matter, but it's a publication. Authorship signifies that an individual has made a significant contribution to the work, and more importantly, is accountable for it. So it doesn't matter even if there were 15 authors to a paper, which happens, by the way. Even the 15th author should be accountable and should have made a significant contribution to be considered as an author. It carries significant value for the researcher themselves, because it's not just meritorious and an honor, but it can directly lead to things like promotion from assistant to associate, associate to professor, lead to promotion positions like getting research directorship and things like that, getting a lot of funding, grants from local, international bodies, and so on and so forth. It is therefore important that authorship actually is attributed accurately and responsibly. According to the Australian Code for Responsible Conduct of Research, these are the responsibilities related to authorship. It says, ensure that authors of research outputs are all those and only those who have made a significant intellectual or scholarly contribution to the research and its output, and that they agree to be listed as an author. So I think it's very important. Sometimes a lot of people will guide us when we are writing a paper, but that guidance shouldn't automatically be assumed that that person will become a co-author or a first author, unless the idea was that person's, the driving force was that person, major contribution scholarly or intellectually was that person, right? So I think here we also think a lot in terms of the relationship between supervisors and PhD students, for instance, or early career researchers and senior researchers. Acknowledge those who have contributed to the research. Now, acknowledgement doesn't automatically mean, again, authorship, right? We do have cases where, for instance, we've had a couple of, I've had this happen where I'm writing articles, I've got 3, 4 authors, and then 2 more authors join in, but then they stop. They say, you know, I cannot go on anymore because I'm not able to contribute anymore. So depending on the amount that they have contributed, if it wasn't significant enough, we can remove them as author and put them under acknowledgement, acknowledging that they have contributed to certain sections and certain ideas, certain methodologies, but they weren't necessarily co-authors of the paper. So adhering to author eligibility criteria is very, very crucial. Ensuring accuracy of reporting and assigning credit for the work contributed. Reaching agreement on authorship in writing if needed prior to submission of a work for review, because once the review process is completed and the publication is in process or has been published, I think this is where if authors suddenly realize, oh, I didn't think this paper would really get published, and it's a really good, strong journal, it's a high-ranked journal, high impact factor, I should have been listed as the second or the first author, it becomes problematic. So reaching that agreement before, acknowledging the contributions of others, including funding agencies, and declaring conflicts of interest, again, very, very important. So why research ethics in authorship? I will give just one example here at this stage, and I'm sure a lot of us are already familiar with this. The case that happened with the retraction of the coronavirus papers over data integrity in 2020. We were in the heart of COVID. People were dying. Doctors were scrambling to save lives. Researchers were trying to figure out what was the best way to try and protect human lives, right? And in this situation, when we heard this news that the Lancet, such a huge scholarly journal, had to retract paper, that really shakes your understanding and belief in research ethics, because already by the time these papers had been retracted in the 2 months, so many more papers and research work had already cited them to continue on with their work. And let's face it, the moment this information happened, there was a pause in the direction, the trajectory of the research itself, because now whatever they were basing it on had suddenly come untrue. Now, why had these researchers done what they had done? If you don't know what the case was, basically they had claimed they had data sets from some data center. When they were asked to reproduce those data, they couldn't. And it was likely believed that they had basically created data just to conduct the study that they had published. So why was it? Why had they done it? A lot of different consensus have been there around, in and around why. Some of the reasons are it was a very politically charged environment. Of course, there's ambition in play here. For-profit model of scientific publication, perish or publish. Desperate quest for information, global desperation for a treatment itself, and of course, the fact that it could be a dramatic publication, especially when you're thinking about elite journals in particular fields. So now looking at concerns, one of the concerns that we see a lot is in and around plagiarism. And plagiarism still is one of the major concerns that plagues any kind of academic writing, including research. I'm just going to quickly introduce the different types. The four main ones are intentional and direct plagiarism, where basically, as you can see in the screenshot, somebody has just directly copied and pasted information and without any indication of citation or in-text citation or trying to credit or acknowledge the original source of that information. Accidental plagiarism, or which can also be known as inadvertent or unintentional plagiarism, mostly it is where you can see that the author has tried to do some kind of citation. They've given an in-text citation, but they haven't really put quotation marks. And worst, they've used Wikipedia. And if we should all, as authors or researchers, know why Wikipedia isn't a legitimate source of information. Although it's a great place to start, and I know a lot of people start with Wikipedia, we cannot really cite Wikipedia. The problem is the information can be changed by anybody. And it is not, people in the background aren't necessarily experts who are changing the information. So you cannot really base you cannot use that as an evidence or a backing for a point that you're trying to make in your research. I say this a lot, particularly to early career researchers and PhD students, that if you've been used to using Wikipedia and now suddenly you're being told that you can't, I know it's a difficult juncture to be in. So what you can do is, if you do come across Wikipedia, look at the original source that they are citing. If you can't find one, don't believe in that information. If you can find one, go to the original source, read that original source and see if that makes sense and if it's supporting your point. Use that and cite that. So typically this would be known as accidental plagiarism, sometimes also as poor academic practice. Hodgepodge patch writing or mosaic writing, where basically, the author just takes the paragraph, changes a few words here and there, and things they have done, they have reworded and rewritten or paraphrased their work. They haven't. Paraphrasing is when you have completely written something after understanding the content in your own words, in the way you have understood it. If you are just going to be changing a few words in a sentence, that's not paraphrasing. In fact, that is still plagiarism, and there is a name for it. Finally, self-plagiarism. Yes, that is a thing. Self-plagiarism is when we kind of use our own content without really bothering to make any changes or upgrades to it. And there is reason for this kind of recognizing the perils of this kind of plagiarism. Because one is, if I have written a particular text for a particular article, it's meant to have been for a particular purpose, because I was aiming for writing for a particular goal, answering a particular research question, different methodologies, so on and so forth. And it gets published. So I've already gotten the credit for that bit of writing as well. Now you might be wondering, how is it that I have written something and I only have to now rewrite it? How can I rewrite it? Trust me, you try writing a sentence now, come back in 5 minutes and try writing the same sentence. It's not possible. So even we ourselves cannot replicate a sentence if we had to write it again. So how can you just be okay with just copying and pasting the same work? If you actually think that, yes, I needed this information here, either cite yourself, cite the work that you have used, or please rewrite it completely, because it is your work. You know the content. You know how that content now molds into the new research paper that you are writing for a different research topic or question or objective. If you haven't done that, that would be considered as self-plagiarism. So here at this stage, I think I would talk a little bit about text matching softwares. It's very important to know that most journals use text matching softwares to ensure they are being able to highlight and make sure that authors have not plagiarized. One common misconception about these softwares are that they're plagiarism detection softwares. They really aren't. Um, uh, uh, we have to be very careful because the products themselves, the companies are not claiming to be plagiarism detection softwares. They are text matching similarity softwares, and they're more than that. There is an artificial intelligence behind that is constantly checking the work that is being submitted to the thousands of databases of information and the internet for any matching text. They're not also claiming that this is plagiarism because it could very well be that the author has copied and pasted a sentence, but they have put it in quotation and they've given the correct in-text citation. So the percentage of similarity may be of concern, although there is a matter of confusion to students and researchers on this, and it does vary from lecturers to publishers. Again, the percentage itself does not denote plagiarism. Very, very, very important. What it does is that percentage of similarity denotes the degree of originality of the work, right? That's what it's denoting. Now, if it is a review paper that I am publishing, naturally, I'm constantly reviewing and citing some author, and then I'm making a commentary. So my percentage of similarity is expected to be high in a paper like that, right? But if I'm claiming to produce something that is original, only my background and literature review may be using a lot of evidence. When I'm backing up my methodology, I might be using some citations. And ultimately, when I'm doing the discussions and I'm doing a comparison to what has originally been published, I might do some comparisons. So again, the degree of similarity or originalities should be a lot higher. The originality should be higher, so similarity should be less compared to a review paper. So I think it's very important to again understand that we need to know how to even read the similarity, whether we are editors, reviewers, or even authors when we are writing research papers. That takes me to move on to contract cheating and ghostwriting. Something when I particularly when I speak to my PhD students from the center, automatically somebody invariably is going to say, how is that a bad thing when you see all these leaders, world leaders and politicians have their speeches written by somebody else and they're just reading it out, right, on a teleprompter. You're right, that is what happens, but you have to understand that they themselves don't accept the speech blindly. The ghostwriters who work with them work intimately with them so they can understand what this person is, their personality is, how they talk. Moreover, they sit with the person to understand what that leader wants to say, what his or her topic is, ideas are, comments are, and then they take all of that to make it into a speech. A lot of leaders actually like to write their own speeches and then give it to a second person to edit it, check it, and verify it before they are able to use it. When it comes to, particularly when it comes to research work and publications, I think it's very important to realize that this is a problem. And it's a huge problem, not just a problem, not just in academia with our current students in classrooms, but with PhD students and not just early career, just researchers in general, because these services offer everything. They offer to write essays, reports, dissertations, programs, subject outlines, slides, even scripts, research papers, and even prepare you in case you need to go for some kind of a viva oral or you're going to do a presentation to prep you for question answers. Now, why authors or students get trapped using these services? Maybe it's because of the performance that person has had in the past. Maybe they have not published enough fast enough as is expected. Unfortunately, the perils, as I mentioned before, about the globalization and monetarization of publications. So, that whole mindset of publish or perish. Poor time management. Let's face it, academics, I think we have 10,000 things that are being thrown at us at any given time. We have students at our doors asking to get some time from us. We have projects to mark, assignments to mark, tests to mark, exam papers to set. We may even have administrative duties that go along with what we do. And in addition, we are supposed to be publishing. That means, and you can't just wake up and start publishing. You have to plan out the research, figure out what it is you're going to do, take the time to do it, and then take the time to write it. So that easily takes anywhere between 8 months to more than a year, sometimes 1.5 years. And that is a very long period of time to wait to publish a paper. Job commitments, as I mentioned, pressure to publish or perish, and most importantly, how cheap and convenient it is to actually get one of these contract cheating sites to write for us. It is a bit bad wolf because, more importantly, because where we think about anything to do with plagiarism, or let's say we think about, oh, I'm going to just use my own paper, etc. Everything is very internalized. But when it comes to contract cheating and ghostwriting, it's a third-party business that basically works as a legitimate service provider in a lot of countries and in a commercial environment. So it is beyond the jurisdiction of an institution or even a journal. So even if a journal comes across a contract cheated paper, they can't really contact the university and tell them, this is a contract cheated paper, because first of all, it's so difficult to prove. And secondly, because what is the university supposed to do? Even if it is beyond the university's jurisdiction as well, because it's a third party that has written the paper. We've also done some research around how contract teaching is actually a social problem. Just like a social problem is a deviation from a social norm, contract cheating is a deviation from the social norm of learning, learning or summative assessments or scientific research finding contributions. What we have seen with our studies as well is that when it is a contract cheating, it does have direct long-term and surrounding impacts, just like a social problem does. Moreover, crucial, it's aspects of addictive behavior. So once an author has done this, they will keep going back to this because this is like the easiest thing to do. Where if you have used contract cheating service before, you've gotten somebody to write for you before, that's like a very quick solution. I can do this, but I don't have the time, right? I don't have enough resources right now to me, so I'm going to ask somebody else, and I'm going to pay them. I'm paying them, so I'm not being unfair, and I'm paying them to do this. So it's this addictive behavior. It's called unwholesome demand, where basically the consumer may be attracted to products that have undesirable social consequences. So this is, again, a huge problem, because particularly if PhD students or early career researchers get used to this, this is a behavior that's going to keep going on and on because of the phenomenon of relapse and experience of loss of control. I'm just going to give you some screenshots that I have either I have found or they've been shared with me by different people at different times during workshops that I've done, either, like I said, students, PhD students, early career researchers, or even senior researchers. So what you're seeing, for instance, is a screenshot of an Instagram page that's there, where they're really thanking them for saving their lives. Where they're basically saying, your writer saved my life because I just received another writer work, which was only copy paste things. They can be very, very creative. As you can see here, they're saying there's a Ramadan sale at 10% off during Ramadan on all assignments. The variety that they offer, the kind of services, this is the screenshot that shows that. Again, don't be afraid to ask for help. So they're making it sound like it's a legitimate service. They're here to help you, but at the same time, it's assignments that they're writing for you. This one is a screenshot from services that are being offered in Saudi Arabia. This is South Africa. This is Oman. So as you can see, this is UAE. This is everywhere. This is not just one country or one part of the world. This is a problem in all countries. And as you can see, they're telling you they're not, here, especially this one is saying no ChatGPT used, only human writer content, and we're going to ensure that it doesn't show up as, it's going to pass the writing in different checkers. The other problem with contract cheating is the blackmailing that happens. And this is a huge problem, not just for students, but even for researchers, because these contract cheaters, when they are communicating, they use backdoor loops, spywares to, to learn about the person who is using their services. So what they're basically doing is they're getting into your computer or your system. They're learning about your password, your email, and ultimately they will get to know your institution as well. And once you have used their work, then they're blackmailing you and asking you for more money. Otherwise, you will be reported to the university. This is not just for students, undergraduate, postgraduate, but we've seen this happen for PhD students. We've seen this happen even to seasoned researchers. So what has been done in and around this? Lots of countries are banning SMLs. These service providers are companies, and they're making them illegitimate instead of being legitimate businesses. Already, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and 17 states in USA have banned these kind of services. Australia, in fact, has been really progressive and been successful with this, the banning that they have been able to block these services from accessing and communicating with people within Australia. So that takes me now to artificial intelligence. And we know this seems to be a paradigm shift in authorship. But is artificial intelligence itself a new phenomenon? So I've given you a piece of writing here. And again, I understand that this is a webinar, so I'm going to ask you, if you're watching the recording at this stage, to take a moment and read this and think about what era do you think this is from? Do you think it's the 1990s, 80s, 70s? What era, what decade do you think this is from? Please take a moment. So if you have, a lot of the guesses that I normally get are in around 1990s, because that's when, computers, internet, everything boom happened. So maybe that's what it is. Some have said 1940s. You will be surprised. This is the engine, which was a fictional device described in the story Gulliver's Travel by Jonathan Swift in 1726. The reason I share this at this stage is just to give you kind of an understanding about artificial intelligence and our really romance of it, right? The humans, all of our romance with artificial intelligence. And it has very little to do with the actual science, a lot more to do with science fiction and also Hollywood. A lot of the times when I do research workshops, I get and I ask people, if you had to imagine artificial intelligence, what do you think it would be like? What does the future look like to you? Invariable answer is robots. And then the next answer is, ooh, killer robots at my doorstep. And we're not that close to general artificial intelligence yet. And the idea that we are getting about killer robots, again, comes mostly from science fiction stories and from Hollywood. The larger than life characters like Arnold Schwarzenegger as Terminator, right? Or when you think about movies like I, Robot with Will Smith. So all of this always tends to show us that the robots, the artificial intelligence ultimately goes rogue, and in the name of saving humanity, they start killing humans. And that narrative is what kind of drives the fear that we see and have been seeing since last year, since the boom that happened about generative AI since last year. Again, as I mentioned, it is not a new phenomenon. Artificial intelligence has been around us for a very long time. If I generally ask people, other than ChatGPT and one of these Gen AI tools, Bing, Copilot, have you been using AI? People say no. But think about it. Every time you take your phone and you start typing and it autofills for you, that's AI right there. If it autocorrects for you, that's AI right there. If you are trying to watch a show and your platform could be Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever it is that you're using, and it starts recommending shows based on what you have watched or liked in the past, that's artificial intelligence right there. So there's a variety of softwares all around us that's using artificial intelligence, and we are using these softwares on a daily basis, but we don't realize it as much. Email spam filters, search terms, Siri as an assistant, virtual assistants, Facebook recommendations, all of these are examples of artificial intelligence. In fact, what you see in front of you is from Parallel Consulting. They did this really interesting study in 2021 where they asked a lot of businesses about artificial intelligence. What was so interesting about this finding is that 84% of people who were interviewed had used artificial intelligence in the past year of that study, but 50% of those people didn't even realize that they had used AI because it is so integrated into our lives. It is so omnipresent and it is ubiquitous everywhere. AI in education, because of course we're talking about academia and research today, has been a fantastic boon. And we all know this, right? From personalizing learning to automated grading and feedback, collaborative learning assistance, and especially in the UAE, we say students of determination or people of determination. It's people with special needs, could be learning disability, could be a physical disability. But AI has really made education accessible and inclusive with things like voice to text, text to voice, converters, facial recognition that allows students with determination to really engage with their peers, with their students, and the content in an inclusive classroom. So we know that AI in education has been a fantastic boon. So that brings me to the whole discussion around generative AI. And I think we have really OpenAI to thank for this. So what is ChatGPT for those of you who may have used it but don't know the background information to how it works? It's called the large language model or an LLM. GPT 3.5 is the one that's free. If you pay, you get the GPT-4. It uses something called a transformer architecture and more than 570 GB of data. But what makes it really interesting is how they have made it work. Unlike previous AI content generators, and there were plenty, this didn't just happen in 2023. It didn't just happen with OpenAI's ChatGPT either in 2021. In fact, you'll be very interested to know Washington Post, as a newspaper, they published their first AI generated article all the way back in 2016. But so what made this so popular? Beside the fact that Microsoft decided to invest $10 billion in it, and that made headlines and everybody woke up and said, what is all this about if Microsoft is spending? The fact that they used a very conversational model, and this was the genius behind what made them so popular. Because we all love to talk and chat, right? Think about it. We are on our phones constantly. We are constantly chatting, commenting, engaging with content, right? So that engagement is what made ChatGPT so popular. In fact, so popular that it reached 100 million users in less than 2 months. That's a lot of users in early 2023. So is this another big bad wolf when it comes to publications and research integrity? Let's have a look at some of the concerns. So one of the biggest problems is accountability and acknowledgement. Who do we acknowledge for the information that we are getting out of any of these generative AI tools? Not just ChatGPT. ChatGPT is one that does it in text, but you've got a host of others that will do combination of text and audio, video, ones that are generating videos from just text now. That's one of the latest announcements we've had from some of the companies. So there's a variety of different generative AI tools out there. But then when we are using the product of these generative AI tools, who is held accountable and how do we acknowledge them? That's an issue. Then comes plagiarism or around originality. A lot of people jumped last year and said, oh, if you're just using content, from one of these tools, it's plagiarism. It's not. And I'll tell you why. Because plagiarism is when we are taking someone else's words or ideas, someone else's. But let's say ChatGPT, 100% original text every time. This is why even if the same person puts the same prompt twice, they will get completely different answers because the model is not repeating. It is creating completely original answer. Yes, there is a copyright issue concern there because of the data set that was used to train these models. Any artificial intelligence model has to be trained on a data set. And the problem that has arisen that we have seen over the last few months is that OpenAI has just used information from online and just dumped it into the training model. And a lot of this information belongs to news articles, newspaper outlets, publishers, journals, so on and so forth. So they are copyrighted material. So yes, there is an issue of copyright, but the text itself that's being produced by ChatGPT is 100% original. Then the problem becomes there is no previous work for the student to copy. So it is not plagiarism. Maybe now somebody will say it's contract cheating because we are getting somebody else to write the work for us. Again, when we think of contract cheating, the definition is a third party beside the original person. So third party could be a student, your parent, your spouse, your child, your grown child maybe, or a colleague, or a service, or a company. Now the problem is third party has to be an agent, right? Who exists and who can take responsibility and accountability. But ChatGPT is just a tool. You cannot hold ChatGPT accountable. Then you might say, okay, so we will hold OpenAI accountable. But OpenAI did not build ChatGPT so people could use it to cheat and plagiarize and write publication papers. So OpenAI cannot be held responsible. So it's not contract cheating. We know there is a challenge with detection. Tools cannot guarantee a high confidence of detection without false positives. It is simple, conversational, and seemingly right information. But we also know that there is a lot of fake news and misinformation that is being given and passed on. And sometimes authors, particularly people who are not very conversed in the content, in the topic, they may just assume that information to be right. We know it is reducing writing skills because we are using it as an offloading, cognitive offload. We're just getting it to write. If I'm just using it as a cognitive offloading, I know my work and I'm just getting it to help me rewrite a sentence or make the sentence structure better. That's not reducing my writing skill. But if I'm just using it to develop completely, I just give it one word and say, okay, write a research paper on XYZ. So then I'm actually allowing it to write for me, which leads to reducing writing skills. There are biases in algorithm and training data. So if we are going to be using these Gen AIs for any kind of research purposes, we have to be extremely careful. If we are not aware of the problems, then we will not know or understand the biases that are there. Wrong answer given confidently. So there is something called hallucination that artificial intelligence systems do. What that means is it's very confidently giving you wrong answers. And why does it do that? Because as I mentioned, artificial intelligence systems have to be trained on a particular model, right? So they have a set data based on which they're producing their answers. Although the data might be huge, right? But they still have a set data. Now, let's say you've come and asked it for something and it looks in the data and it can't find it. Unlike a human being who will come back and say, I'm sorry, I really don't know the answer to that. Gen AI is not going to tell you that. It's going to still use whatever it can to figure out what is the next best thing to say in that situation. And that's what the answer it's going to give you, which is probably going to be very, very wrong. There are privacy concerns around using the information that they're giving us, plus putting any information that we have into it, because it is going to belong to them and they're going to use it and we don't know how. And at the end, text fed into these models can skew narratives because we're only seeing one-sided narrative at the moment anyways already, because the training data is being set, it's being trained by fixed set of people on a fixed set of data. Other areas of concern, a big one for research is the bias in generative AI models, from really skewing research direction because it's one narrative that we are hearing. So it really narrows the research focus. It skips out voices of different segments and sectors. Public perception, it affects public trust, damaging confidence. Inaccurate findings leads to errors, distorting results, and reinforcing prejudices. Because it is so heavy on bias and stereotypes, it is going to reinforce a lot of discrimination and inequality. A huge problem in research community generally is retraction. Globally, we have seen from Web of Science in 2023, there were 18,000 plus retractions recorded from different journals. Now, this 18,700, this is how the distribution was. Fraud, falsification, and fabrication was almost 30%. Plagiarism was 24%. Duplication was 22%. Mistakes, things like inaccurate data, results, or methods was 11%. Misconduct, mistreating subjects, misuse funds, etc., was 6%. Ethical concerns like consequences and risks was 3.8%, and disputed authorship was 3.4%. Any reason, whatever the reason might be, the retraction itself is a problem, because let's face it, the moment there is a publication, it has the potential to generate a lot of interest and curiosity and subsequent research. So any person, any other study that has cited this retracted paper now is up for question mark as well. Problem with using artificial intelligence. This is a very interesting one. If you look at it, this person published. This was a published paper in a journal, and what you see is basically image that was created by artificial intelligence. And the review process was so weak, unfortunately, they didn't capture it, right? You can see that the text here has mistakes, spelling mistakes. And usually when you're using artificial intelligence generators, image generators especially, they're really bad at this. It's very difficult to get the generators to give you the correct image that you're thinking of with the correct spelling. This one is again in Elsevier, published, and as you can see, that first paragraph, I know it's a little blurry, so I'll read it out. The first sentence says, certainly here is a possible introduction for your topic. And then it has written. So it looks like in this case, the author had just used the Gen AI to generate the article and just copied and pasted it. And that passed review and it was published. Same thing happened in this case as well. It says, I'm sorry, but I don't have access to real-time information or patient-specific data as I'm an AI language model. I can provide general information about managing hepatic artery, portal vein, and bile duct injuries, but for specific cases, so on and so forth. So again, published article, that means it's gone through review and it has been published, and it was clearly written by generative AI, some kind of a tool. And ultimately these have to be retracted. So how do we go forward? I think it's very important that first we realize that originality, integrity, and innovation has become absolutely of vital importance in any kind of assessed work, including research publications. This is not something new. This is something researchers have been talking about forever. So with that understanding, the next thing is to understand, how do we even define this problem, right? So European Network for Academic Integrity actually published a recommendation on the ethical use of artificial intelligence in education. They've given a definition which says UCG, or unauthorized content generation, is the production of academic work in whole or part for academic credit, progression, or award whether or not in payment or other favor is involved, using unapproved or undeclared human or technological assistance. So I think it's very important that we start by first understanding this. Like, how do we define this problem? Because then we can figure out how do we solve the problem, which is figuring out attribution, acknowledgement, and so on and so forth. If you think about the variety of public publication houses, they have given plenty of guidelines already. And even if I'm not planning to publish with any of them, it is worthwhile to read the general guidelines that they have provided, because globally now they're slowly being accepted as guidelines that should be used when you're thinking about AI tools. For instance, Emerald Publishing says AI tools, large models cannot be credited with authorship for any of their publications. Any use of AI tools within the development of the publication must be flagged by the authors within the paper, chapter, or case study. COP is an organization that actually looks at publication. So what it says is expanding rapidly, and they're consistently saying that AI tools cannot be listed as an author of a paper. Elsevier, we saw 2 cases, unfortunately, of publications there. It says where authors use AI and AI-assisted technologies in writing process, these technologies should only be used to improve readability and language of the work, and not to replace key authoring tasks, such as producing scientific, pedagogic, or medical insights, drawing scientific conclusions, providing clinical recommendations. Nature has also given their own recommendation. They clearly say you cannot give them authorship. If attribution also carries with it accountability, if you're using LLM, should be properly documented in the method section. So they're even telling you where to document it if you have used it, because ultimately it is a tool that you're using. Just like, for instance, if I was going to be using NVivo or SPSS for my analysis of research, and I will mention that in the methodology that I plan to use these tools for this kind of work. So similarly, we have to look at these generative AI tools as tools that we're using to significantly maybe improve the readability and language of the work that we are producing. There's a fantastic guideline for use of generative AI and authorship from IEEE, which which kind of gives you a list of the society and the publishers and what their views are in terms of understanding, the use of generative AI, either text or images, disclosure of AI use, criteria for authorship, and so on and so forth. As you can see, most of them unanimously say no to authorship. With criteria for authorship, they say contribution, approve, accountability. Okay, disclosure of AI must be acknowledged. Use of AI generated images, a lot of them say no, some of them are unspecified, some of them say they need permission before the author can actually use them. This is the ethical framework for peer review and validation of AI generated content. The idea is to have a clear ethical guideline, transparency and disclosure, bias mitigation and fairness, data privacy and security, addressing authorship and attribution, collaborating with ethical bodies, updating guidelines, promoting responsible AI use. Very importantly, more importantly, the importance of disclosing the use of generative and tools. It promotes transparency and reproducibility, because if I have used AI, I myself cannot regenerate, and I have to understand and acknowledge that point first. Assist in peer review and evaluation, address ethical concerns, foster community building, enhance trust and credibility, prevents misuse. So at this point, I would like to invite everybody who is, if there's anybody in the audience who is from UAE, to join us this Saturday at Zayed University, where we are conducting a symposium on academic and research integrity. We are doing a variety of activities also. There are conferences happening in and around academic and research integrity, such as the Facing Academic Integrity Threats Conference that's happening in Turkey under the Erasmus program of the European Union. There is, of course, our Center for Academic Integrity in the UAE that is working extensively on generative AI, AI ethics, and research publications, and supporting community through workshops, training, master classes, and so on and so forth. And I think we need to understand that we can only go forward if we work together, we work hand in hand, because if we want to really uphold integrity in publications, we need to have a clear understanding of plagiarism, ghostwriting, and authorship, and what AI has done for all of this in today's world. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. I have put in my email address for any questions, or if anybody in the audience is interested to get in touch with me, I'm happy to respond. Thank you so much. If there is any question, I'm happy to answer as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for the very comprehensive and informative session. It's just a comment. Yeah, so yeah, as you said, one of the most important and challenging issue in dealing with technology is to make the balance between the many advantages that the technology has and maintaining ethical consideration for its use. And I think yeah, a huge effort is needed to be taken to raise the awareness of the target audience in how to deal with this type of technologies. Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Han.
Absolutely. Thank you once again for the opportunity. Thank you to Turnitin and Just Tech for putting this together and for inviting me to be a speaker.
Yes, thank you. We are really honored to have you, Doctor.
Absolute pleasure.
Yes, Walid, Dr. Walid. Yes, Walid معنا.